The bitter taste of lukewarm coffee had become so familiar, I barely noticed it anymore. I set the chipped mug down on my desk, the ceramic clicking against the cheap laminate surface that had seen better days, probably before I was born. My fingers were stained with ink from the ancient printer that Sebastian Corsetti refused to replace, despite the fact that he could probably buy the entire building with what he spent on a single tailored suit. The fluorescent lights above me flickered, as they did every afternoon around 3 o'clock, casting my small corner of the executive floor in intermittent shadow. I'd learned to time my work around these minor disruptions. Print important documents before 3. Proofread contracts after 3:30 when the lights stabilized. Survive until 6. Repeat. 2 years. 730 days of being invisible. I smoothed down the fabric of my gray pencil skirt, the same one I'd worn 3 times this week already, because my wardrobe consisted of exactly 4 work-appropriate outfits that I rotated religiously. My white blouse had a small stain near the hem that I'd tried to hide by tucking it in tighter, but I could still see it when I looked down. Not that anyone else would notice. No one ever looked at me long enough to notice anything. The office of Corsetti Enterprises occupied the top 3 floors of the Montclair building in downtown Chicago. From my desk, positioned strategically outside Sebastian's private office, I had a view of absolutely nothing. Just the hallway leading to the elevator and the frosted glass door that separated me from the inner sanctum where real business happened. The kind of business that required soundproofing and men with guns standing guard. I wasn't naive. I knew what Sebastian Corsetti was. Everyone in Chicago knew, even if they pretended not to. The Italian mob had roots in this city that went deeper than the subway tunnels, and the Corsetti family tree was watered with blood and loyalty in equal measure. Sebastian had inherited the empire from his father 5 years ago, and by all accounts, he'd made it more profitable and more dangerous than ever before. But none of that was my concern. My job was simple. Answer phones, manage his calendar, type correspondence, and above all, remain invisible. Professional invisibility was a skill I'd perfected. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. Don't ask questions. Don't exist in any meaningful way. It was exactly what I needed. The phone on my desk rang, the shrill sound cutting through the silence. I picked it up before the second ring. Mr. Corsetti's office, Stella Morgan speaking. Stella. The voice belonged to Marco Benedetti, Sebastian's second in command. His tone was clipped, efficient. Is he in? He's in a meeting with the accountants, I replied, glancing at the closed door. Should be finished in about 20 minutes. Tell him I need 5 minutes as soon as he's free. It's about the shipment. I didn't ask which shipment. I never asked. I'll let him know. The line went dead without a goodbye. That was Marco's way, direct, businesslike, devoid of pleasantries. I appreciated it, actually. It meant he saw me as functional, which was better than not seeing me at all. I made a note on the pad beside my computer, adding Marco's request to the growing list of things Sebastian needed to know. My handwriting was neat, precise, the product of 2 years of practice at translating verbal chaos into organized action items. The door to Sebastian's office opened, and 3 men in expensive suits filed out, their faces showing varying degrees of stress. The accountants. They never looked happy after meetings with Sebastian. I kept my eyes on my computer screen, typing nonsense words just to appear busy as they passed my desk without acknowledging my existence. When they were gone, I counted to 10, my standard waiting period, before gathering the stack of documents that required Sebastian's signature and standing up. My heels were sensible, low, and they made almost no sound on the polished marble floor as I approached his door. I knocked twice, softly. Enter. His voice always did something strange to my nervous system, made my pulse quicken in a way I'd learned to ignore. I pushed open the door and stepped into the office that was the complete opposite of my utilitarian corner. Sebastian Corsetti's private domain was all dark wood paneling, leather furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. The late afternoon sun cast everything in shades of amber and gold, including the man himself, who stood behind his massive desk, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that shouldn't have been as distracting as they were. He was 34. I knew because I'd arranged his birthday dinner reservations last month, and he looked like what he was. Power personified. Dark hair cut short but not too short, a jaw that could have been carved from marble, and eyes so dark they appeared black in certain lights. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with the kind of build that suggested he could break a man in half if the mood struck him. I kept my gaze professional, focused on a point just past his left shoulder. "The contracts you requested, Mr. Corsetti. They need your signature before I send them to legal." He didn't move immediately, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. This was normal. Sebastian had a way of looking at people that made them squirm, that made them confess things they hadn't planned to confess. It was a weapon, that stare, and he wielded it expertly. I'd learned not to squirm. "Put them on the desk," he said finally. I moved forward, careful to maintain the appropriate distance, and set the stack of papers down in the exact spot where he preferred them. Left side, aligned with the edge of the leather desk pad. 2 years of observation had taught me his preferences. Coffee black, no sugar, documents on the left, messages arranged by priority, and absolute discretion about everything I saw and heard. "Marco Benedetti called," I added, consulting the notepad I'd brought with me. "He needs 5 minutes when you're available. It's about the shipment, and your 4 o'clock appointment is confirmed. Mr. Rossi will be here shortly." Sebastian picked up one of the contracts, his eyes scanning the first page. "Cancel tomorrow's lunch with Giordano. I'll be in New York." I made a note. "Should I reschedule?" "No. 1 word. Clear. Final." I nodded and turned to leave. "Stella." I paused, my hand on the door. "Yes, Mr. Corsetti." "How long have you worked here?" The question caught me off guard. In 2 years, Sebastian had never asked me anything personal. I turned back to face him, careful to keep my expression neutral. 2 years this October, sir." He studied me for a moment, and I had the unsettling sensation that he was actually seeing me for the first time. Really seeing me, not just looking through me the way everyone else did. "You're efficient," he said. It wasn't quite a compliment, more of an observation. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. It's not a compliment, it's a fact." He set the contract down. "You never ask questions." "It's not my place to ask questions," I replied carefully. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "No, it's not." He paused. "That's all." I left his office, closing the door behind me with a soft click, and returned to my desk. My hands were steadier than I expected them to be, though my heart was beating faster than normal. That brief exchange had been the longest conversation Sebastian and I had ever had that didn't involve work logistics. It meant nothing, I told myself. He'd probably forgotten about it already. The afternoon continued its predictable rhythm. Phones rang. I answered them. People came and went. I directed them. Documents needed processing. I processed them. At 5:30, I ordered Sebastian's dinner from his preferred Italian restaurant and had it delivered to his office, as I did every evening he worked late. At 6 o'clock, I shut down my computer, gathered my worn purse, and prepared to leave. The office was quieter now, most of the legitimate staff having departed hours ago. The only people who remained were those whose business couldn't be conducted during daylight hours. I was halfway to the elevator when I heard voices, angry voices coming from one of the conference rooms. I should have kept walking, should have pressed the elevator button and left. But I recognized one of the voices as belonging to Giovanni, one of Sebastian's enforcers, and the other voice was pleading, terrified. My feet stopped moving without my permission. "Please," the unknown voice was saying. I can get the money. Just give me more time. You've had time, Giovanni replied, his tone flat. The boss doesn't give extensions. The sound that followed made my stomach turn. A heavy thud, followed by a gasping wheeze. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering now for entirely different reasons. This was why I kept my head down. Why I never asked questions. Why invisibility was survival. The conference room door opened, and Giovanni emerged, adjusting his cufflinks as casually as if he'd just finished a business meeting. He saw me immediately, and his expression hardened. You should go home, Stella. It wasn't a suggestion. I nodded mutely and forced my legs to carry me to the elevator. My hands shook as I pressed the button. The doors opened immediately, as if the universe was offering me an escape route, and I stepped inside. As the elevator descended, I tried to steady my breathing. This was my life now, had been for 2 years. The pay was extraordinary, triple what I could make anywhere else with my qualifications, and I needed every penny. My mother's medical bills didn't pay themselves. The experimental treatment she was receiving in Ohio cost more per month than most people earned in a year. So I kept my head down, stayed invisible, survived. The evening air hit me as I exited the building, cool and sharp with the promise of autumn. Chicago in September was unpredictable, warm days giving way to cold nights, and I pulled my thin cardigan tighter around myself as I walked the 6 blocks to the L station. My apartment was small, a studio in a neighborhood that was slowly gentrifying, but hadn't quite gotten there yet. It was clean, safe enough, and most importantly, affordable, despite my decent salary. Every extra dollar went to Ohio, to the medical center where my mother was fighting cancer with treatments that insurance refused to cover. I unlocked my door, dropped my purse on the small table that served as both dining surface and desk, and collapsed onto my bed without bothering to change out of my work clothes. The ceiling had a water stain shaped like Italy, and I stared at it while my mind replayed the day. Sebastian's question echoed in my thoughts. How long have you worked here? 2 years. 730 days of being invisible. Tomorrow would be 731. I had no way of knowing that tomorrow, everything would change. That invisibility, my most valuable asset, was about to become impossible to maintain. That a man's interest would shatter the careful facade I'd built, and that Sebastian Corsetti would finally, truly, see me. And once he did, he would never look away again. The water from my ancient showerhead sputtered before settling into its usual lukewarm drizzle. I stood under the weak stream, trying to wash away the memory of Giovanni's cold voice and the sound of violence from the conference room. This was the routine. Compartmentalize. Forget. Survive. By the time I stepped out and wrapped myself in my threadbare towel, I'd almost succeeded in pushing it from my mind. Almost. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. A text from the medical center in Ohio. Treatment session scheduled for Friday. Payment due by Thursday, EOD. I looked at my bank account balance and did the mental math I'd done 1,000 times before. The money from my paycheck would clear tomorrow. It would be enough. Barely. It was always barely enough, walking a tightrope between my mother's survival and my own. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 7:30, the same time I always did. The lobby of the Montclair building was still relatively empty, just security guards and cleaning crews finishing their overnight shifts. I rode the elevator to the 32nd floor. My coffee, purchased from the cart outside because I couldn't afford the artisanal cafe in the lobby, already cooling in my hand. Marco was waiting by my desk. That was unusual. Marco never waited. He demanded, commanded, expected immediate attention, but he didn't wait. "Morning," I said carefully, setting down my purse and coffee. "We have a situation," he said without preamble. "The boss has meetings all day, back to back, no breaks. I need you to keep everyone on schedule. No delays, no interruptions unless it's me or it's an emergency. Understood. I pulled out my notepad, ready to take details. What kind of meetings? Marco's jaw tightened. The kind where being late would be problematic. Translation: lives depended on punctuality today. I swallowed and nodded. I'll make sure everything runs smoothly. He studied me for a moment, and I had the distinct impression he was assessing whether I could handle the pressure. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he gave a curt nod and walked away. I powered up my computer and reviewed Sebastian's calendar. Marco hadn't been exaggerating. The schedule was brutal. 9 meetings between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., each one marked with a red flag in the system. The code I'd learned meant critical importance. The names attached to the appointments read like a who's who of Chicago's power structure, both legitimate and otherwise. At 7:55, I straightened my desk, checked my appearance in the compact mirror I kept in my drawer, hair neat, minimal makeup, professional and forgettable, and prepared for the onslaught. Sebastian arrived at precisely 8 o'clock, which meant he'd probably been in the building for at least an hour already, using the private elevator that went directly to his penthouse office on the 34th floor. He strode past my desk without acknowledgement, which was normal, and I caught the scent of expensive cologne and something darker, more primal, anger, maybe, or determination. The first meeting began at 8:15, then the second, then the third. I managed the flow of people with precision, ushering them in at their appointed times, providing refreshments when requested, taking messages when necessary. By noon, I hadn't even had time to use the restroom, let alone eat the granola bar I'd brought for lunch. At 1:30, during a brief 10-minute gap between meetings, Sebastian's door opened and he appeared, loosening his tie with one hand while checking his phone with the other. "Coffee," he said without looking at me, "and get me Marcello on the phone. Tell him if he's not here in 15 minutes, the deal is off." I was already reaching for the phone before he finished speaking. "Yes, sir. Would you like your usual lunch order?" "No time." He finally looked at me, and I saw the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes. "Just the coffee. Strong." I nodded and made the call to Marcello, while simultaneously putting in the coffee order to the cafe downstairs. The art of multitasking had become second nature. Marcello answered on the third ring, his voice smooth and unconcerned. "Tell Corsetti I'm 10 minutes out," he said, when I relayed the urgency. "He said 15 minutes or the deal is off," I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. A pause. Then, "I'll be there in 8. I hung up and caught Sebastian watching me from his doorway. "He'll be here in 8 minutes. Something that might have been approval crossed his face. "You're good at this." "It's my job, sir." "No." He moved closer to my desk, and I became acutely aware of his presence, the way he seemed to fill the space around him. "Your job is answering phones and typing letters. This," he gestured vaguely, "managing my chaos, anticipating what I need before I ask for it, making grown men move faster with a single phone call. That's something else." I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said, "Thank you." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "Marcello's here. Send him in the moment he arrives." He turned back toward his office, then paused. "And Stella? You should eat something. You've been here since 7:30. He disappeared into his office before I could process the fact that he knew what time I arrived, that he'd noticed I hadn't eaten, that for the second time in 2 days, Sebastian Corsetti had acknowledged me as something more than a functional piece of office equipment. Marcello arrived in exactly 8 minutes, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I ushered him into Sebastian's office and closed the door behind him, then stood there for a moment, my hand still on the door handle, trying to understand what was changing. The coffee arrived. I paid with the company card and brought it to Sebastian, knocking softly before entering. The two men were standing by the windows, their conversation intense but too quiet for me to hear. I set the coffee on the desk and turned to leave. "Stella?" Sebastian called. I turned back. "Close the door on your way out." It was what he always said, so why did it sound different this time? Why did I feel like I was being dismissed and protected simultaneously? The afternoon continued its relentless pace. More meetings, more phone calls, more managing of powerful men who weren't accustomed to being managed. By 4 o'clock, my feet ached in my sensible heels. My head throbbed from the fluorescent lights, and my stomach was eating itself. That's when he walked in. I noticed him immediately, because he was different from the usual parade of dangerous men in expensive suits. He was younger, maybe early 30s, with sandy brown hair and warm hazel eyes that actually crinkled when he smiled. He wore a suit too, but his was rumpled in a way that suggested he'd been wearing it all day in actual courtrooms rather than intimidation sessions. "Hi," he said, approaching my desk with an openness that was almost jarring in this environment. "I'm looking for Sebastian Corsetti. I'm David Morrison with Morrison & Associates. I have a 4:30 appointment?" I checked the calendar. There it was. David Morrison, attorney. The notation said, "Legitimate business consultation," which I'd learned was code for actual legal work, not mob business. "Yes, Mr. Morrison. Mr. Corsetti is just finishing up with his current meeting. He should be available in about 5 minutes. Please, have a seat." I gestured to the waiting area, a cluster of leather chairs that cost more than my yearly rent. "Please, call me David." He didn't move to the chairs. Instead, he stayed at my desk, tilting his head slightly. "And you are?" "Stella Morgan," I replied automatically, then caught myself. When had I last introduced myself to anyone who came through this office? They never asked, never cared. "Stella?" he repeated, and the way he said it, like it was a name worth remembering, made me look up from my computer. That's a beautiful name. Does it mean star? "Yes," I said, surprised. "It does. Fitting." He smiled, and it was genuine, reaching his eyes. "How long have you worked here, Stella?" 2 years. The answer was coming easier now, after Sebastian's question yesterday. 2 years as the gatekeeper to one of Chicago's most powerful men. That must be interesting work. There was no sarcasm in his voice, no hidden agenda that I could detect. He seemed genuinely curious about me, about my job, about my existence as something more than a functional obstacle between him and his appointment. It was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond. "It's certainly never dull," I managed finally. He laughed, a warm sound that seemed out of place in this office of calculated silences and veiled threats. "I imagine not. Do you—" The door to Sebastian's office opened, interrupting whatever David had been about to ask. The current appointment left, and Sebastian appeared in the doorway. His eyes went immediately to David, then to me, then back to David. Something in his expression shifted, hardened in a way I'd never quite seen before. "Morrison," he said, his voice carrying an edge. "You're early." "Only by 3 minutes," David replied easily, checking his watch. "Your secretary, Stella, was kind enough to let me wait." "Assistant," Sebastian corrected sharply. "She's my executive assistant, not a secretary." I blinked. In 2 years, Sebastian had never corrected anyone's mischaracterization of my position. I wasn't sure he'd even noticed what people called me. David held up his hands in a gesture of apology. "My mistake. Executive assistant. I didn't mean any disrespect." Sebastian's jaw worked, and for a moment, I thought he might actually snap at this perfectly pleasant lawyer who'd done nothing wrong. Instead, he said, "Come in, we have a lot to cover." As David passed my desk, he paused and lowered his voice. "It was nice meeting you, Stella. I hope we can talk more next time." Then he was gone, disappearing into Sebastian's office. The door closed with more force than necessary. I sat frozen at my desk, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Something had just happened. Something I didn't fully understand but could feel in the sudden tension that seemed to permeate the air. Through the closed door, I could hear the murmur of voices. David's warm tones and Sebastian's clipped responses. The meeting was supposed to last an hour, but 45 minutes in, the door opened and David emerged, looking slightly bewildered. "That was efficient," he said, approaching my desk again. "Mr. Corsetti certainly doesn't waste time." "He values efficiency," I replied, falling back on professional platitudes. David glanced back at the closed door, then at me. "Listen, I know this might be inappropriate, but would you like to have coffee sometime?" "Not here," he added quickly. "I mean, away from the office. Somewhere you can actually relax." My mouth opened, but no words came out. Was he asking me on a date? Had anyone ever asked me on a date? Not in the last 2 years, certainly. My life had become so narrowly focused on work and my mother's medical bills that the very concept of dating seemed foreign. I started, genuinely unsure how to respond. The door to Sebastian's office opened again. This time, Sebastian stood in the doorway, his dark eyes fixed on David with an intensity that made my skin prickle with warning. "Morrison," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Did you need something else?" David straightened, apparently oblivious to the threat radiating from Sebastian. "No, I was just—" "Then I suggest you leave. I'm sure you have other clients to attend to." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command wrapped in the thinnest veneer of civility. David seemed to finally sense the danger, because he nodded quickly and headed for the elevator. "Think about it, Stella," he called over his shoulder. "I'm in the directory if you want to grab that coffee." The elevator doors closed, and silence descended like a guillotine blade. I kept my eyes on my computer, trying to become invisible again, trying to disappear back into the safe obscurity I'd cultivated for 2 years. "Stella." Sebastian's voice cut through the silence. "My office. Now." My heart hammered as I stood and walked toward him. He stepped aside to let me pass, then closed the door behind us with a decisive click. I stood in the center of his office, hands clasped in front of me, waiting for whatever was coming. Sebastian moved to his desk, but he didn't sit. He stood behind it, his hands braced on the polished surface, his entire body taut with something I couldn't name. "How long has Morrison been flirting with you?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. What? He wasn't... Don't. The word cracked like a whip. "Don't insult my intelligence or yours. He was flirting with you, blatantly. In my office. So I'll ask again, how long?" "That was the first time I've ever met him," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "He just arrived today. I've never spoken to him before." Sebastian's eyes narrowed. "And you were going to say yes?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I don't know what I was going to say. He's not right for you." The statement was so unexpected, so far outside the bounds of our professional relationship, that I could only stare at him. "I'm sorry?" "David Morrison. He's not right for you." Sebastian straightened, moving around the desk with predatory grace. "He's soft, naive. He sees the world in terms of right and wrong, black and white. He would bore you within a month." "With all due respect, sir, I don't think—" "No, you don't think." He was closer now, close enough that I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. "You don't think about how you exist in this office, how you've made yourself invisible, how you've spent 2 years pretending you're not remarkable when you're the most competent person on this entire floor." I took a step back, my shoulders hitting the wall beside his desk. "I'm just doing my job." "No." He placed one hand on the wall beside my head, not touching me but caging me in. You're doing my job. You're doing Marco's job. You're running an empire from behind that desk and pretending you're nothing more than someone who answers phones. What do you want from me?" The question came out as barely a whisper. His eyes burned into mine. "I want you to understand something. You think you're invisible, but you're not. Not to me. You've never been invisible to me." My breath caught. "I don't understand. I know you arrive at 7:30 every morning. I know you eat a granola bar for lunch at your desk because you can't afford anything else. I know your mother is sick in Ohio, and every penny you make goes to keeping her alive. I know you walk 6 blocks to the L station every night because you won't spend money on a cab. I know you haven't bought yourself anything new in months. I know everything about you, Stella." The room spun. "Why?" "Because I've been watching you for 2 years. His voice dropped to something dark and possessive. "And I'll be damned if I'm going to let some naive lawyer who doesn't know what danger looks like walk in here and take what's mine." "Yours?" The word was barely audible. "Mine," he confirmed, and there was no room for argument in his tone. "You just didn't know it yet." The world had tilted on its axis, and I was free falling through empty space with nothing to hold on to. Sebastian's words echoed in my ears, mine, as if he'd just claimed ownership of something he'd purchased, not someone who'd been standing beside him for 2 years without his notice. Except he had noticed. He'd been watching. "I need to go," I managed, my voice thin and reedy. "I need to... My shift is over, I should..." "Your shift ended 20 minutes ago," Sebastian said, not moving from his position, still caging me against the wall with the sheer force of his presence. "But you're always here until I leave." "Why is that, Stella?" "Because I was afraid of what happened in dark offices after hours," I thought. "Because staying late and leaving with the crowd felt safer. Because the extra 30 minutes of looking busy sometimes resulted in overtime pay I desperately needed." "Dedication," I said instead, the lie tasting bitter. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Liar." The accusation should have offended me, but his tone held something almost like admiration. He finally stepped back, giving me room to breathe, and moved to the windows overlooking the city. The setting sun painted him in shades of copper and shadow, turning him into something both beautiful and terrifying. "You can go," he said, his back to me. "But Stella, don't accept coffee dates from men who don't understand what you're worth." I fled. There was no other word for it. I grabbed my purse from my desk drawer, didn't bother shutting down my computer properly, and practically ran to the elevator. My hands shook as I pressed the button. The doors couldn't open fast enough. The 6-block walk to the L station passed in a blur. My mind was racing too fast to process the familiar streets, the early evening crowds, the smell of street food from vendor carts. All I could think about was Sebastian's voice saying mine with absolute certainty, as if my opinion on the matter was irrelevant. The worst part? Some traitorous part of me had thrilled at the possessiveness in his tone. My apartment offered no sanctuary. I paced the small space like a caged animal, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Sebastian Corsetti, dangerous, powerful, untouchable Sebastian Corsetti, had just claimed me as his. Not asked, not suggested. Claimed. I should have been terrified. Should have been planning my resignation. Should have been looking for a new job. Consequences be damned. Instead, I was remembering the way his eyes had burned when he looked at me. The way his voice had dropped to something dark and possessive. The way my entire body had responded to his proximity, every nerve ending suddenly alive after 2 years of numbness. My phone rang, shattering my spiraling thoughts. The medical center. I answered on the second ring. "Ms. Morgan?" The nurse's voice was professionally sympathetic. "I'm calling about your mother's treatment schedule. We've had to move Friday's session to Thursday because Dr. Peterson will be out of town." The payment will need to clear by tomorrow morning instead of Thursday evening. My stomach dropped. Tomorrow morning? But the money doesn't clear until tomorrow afternoon. Can't we? I'm sorry, Ms. Morgan. The payment must be received before we can administer treatment. Hospital policy. After she hung up, I stood in the center of my apartment, doing frantic mental math. I could call the bank, see if they'd release the funds early. I could take out a payday loan, though the interest rates were predatory. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your bank account. My hands trembled as I opened my banking app. The screen loaded slowly, each second an eternity. Then the numbers appeared, and I stopped breathing. A deposit had been made to my account 4 hours ago. $50,000. The memo line read, "Advance on salary." SC. I sank onto my bed, staring at the screen. This was impossible. This was too much. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID read Corsetti S. I'd never had Sebastian's direct number before. Always went through Marco or the main office line. The fact that he was calling me, personally, from his private number, made this all the more surreal. Hello? My voice cracked. You found it. Not a question. He knew I had. Mr. Corsetti, I can't accept this. It's too much. It's an advance, he interrupted smoothly, to be deducted from your salary over the next year. I'm not giving you charity, Stella. I'm ensuring my assistant can focus on her job instead of worrying about medical bills. You had no right. I had every right. His voice hardened. You work for me. That means you're under my protection. That means I take care of what's mine. There was that word again. Mine. I don't belong to you, I said, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. Don't you? The challenge in his voice made my pulse quicken. Then why haven't you hung up? Why haven't you transferred the money back? Why are you still on the phone with me when you should be telling me to go to hell? Because I didn't have any of those answers. Because $50,000 meant my mother would live. Because Sebastian Corsetti had just offered me something no one else could. Security, even if it came wrapped in dangerous strings. What do you want from me? I asked again, the same question I'd asked in his office. This time his answer was different. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. That's not appropriate. I work for you. Then consider it a business dinner. We need to discuss your new salary arrangement. We could discuss that in the office. We could, he agreed. But I prefer somewhere we won't be interrupted. Somewhere you can't run away when the conversation gets uncomfortable. I don't run away. You ran today. There was dark amusement in his voice. Nearly knocked over a junior associate in your hurry to get to the elevator. Heat flooded my cheeks. I needed to leave. You needed to think, I understand. But Stella, the thinking time is over. I'll have Marco send a car for you tomorrow at 7. Wear something nice. I don't have anything. I stopped, hating how the words exposed my poverty. Check your closet in the morning. Before I could protest, he continued. And Stella, thank you. For what? For 2 years of exceptional work, for making my life easier without asking for recognition, for being exactly who you are. A pause. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be interesting. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on my bed for a long time, phone in hand, trying to understand what was happening to my carefully controlled life. In the span of 24 hours, I'd gone from invisible to the center of Sebastian Corsetti's attention. From anonymous to claimed, from safe obscurity to dangerous exposure. And the most terrifying part? I wasn't sure I wanted to go back. The next morning, I woke to find 3 garment bags hanging on my apartment doorknob. Inside were designer dresses, actual designer dresses with tags still attached, in my exact size. Sizes he shouldn't have known. But of course he did. He'd been watching. I chose the simplest one, a midnight blue sheath that was still infinitely more elegant than anything I'd ever owned. It fit perfectly. Everything fit perfectly. The shoes, the small clutch, even the delicate gold jewelry tucked into a velvet box. I felt like someone else as I got ready for work that morning. The dress made me stand differently, carry myself with more confidence. Or maybe it wasn't the dress. Maybe it was the knowledge that someone saw me, really saw me, for the first time in years. The office was different too, though nothing tangible had changed. I could feel eyes on me as I walked to my desk. The other assistants on the floor, the junior associates, even the security guard. They all looked at me differently, as if something fundamental had shifted overnight. Marco was waiting by my desk again, but this time his expression was unreadable. "Morning," he said, his eyes taking in my new appearance without comment. "Boss wants to see you. Now." My heart hammered as I set down my purse and walked to Sebastian's office. I knocked twice. "Enter." He was standing by the windows again, and he turned when I walked in. His eyes traveled over me slowly, thoroughly, and something dark and satisfied gleamed in their depths. "Close the door." I did, and the click of the latch sounded impossibly loud in the quiet office. "The dress suits you," he said, moving toward me with that predatory grace I was beginning to recognize. But then, I knew it would. "How did you know my size?" "I pay attention." He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "I've always paid attention to you, Stella. Every detail, every habit, every preference." "That's—" I struggled for the right word. "Invasive." "Yes." He didn't apologize. "It is. But I'm not a man who does things halfway. When something matters to me, I learn everything about it, and you've mattered for a very long time. Why didn't you say anything? Why spend 2 years watching in silence?" His jaw tightened. "Because you needed to be invisible. I saw that. You were running from something, hiding from something, and I gave you the space to do that. But then David Morrison walked in here and looked at you like you were someone worth pursuing, and I realized my patience had limits." "You were jealous," I breathed, the realization hitting me, of a lawyer you'd just met. "Jealous implies I was worried about competition." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "I wasn't worried. I was territorial. There's a difference." I should have been appalled by his arrogance. Instead, I found myself asking, "What happens now? Now?" He reached up, his fingers brushing a strand of hair back from my face in a gesture that was surprisingly gentle. "Now you stop pretending you don't feel this too, this thing between us. You've felt it, haven't you? In the moments when our hands accidentally touch, in the seconds when you catch me looking at you, in the silence of late nights when we're the only ones left in the office." I had. God help me. I had felt it. The electric awareness. The way my skin seemed to heat when he was near. The way I found excuses to enter his office just to be in his presence for a few more seconds. "I can't," I whispered. "You're my boss. This is inappropriate. This is inevitable." His thumb traced my jawline, and I shivered despite myself. "You can fight it. You can tell yourself all the logical reasons why this shouldn't happen, but it won't change the truth." "What truth?" His eyes held mine, dark and absolute. "That you're already mine. You have been since the day you walked into this office and met my eyes without flinching. Since the first time you organized my chaos and made it beautiful. Since you became the only person in this building I trust without reservation." "Trust?" I repeated. "You barely speak to me. I don't need to speak to you to trust you. I see how you work, how you handle confidential information without being told it's confidential." How you manage dangerous men with grace and intelligence. How you've never once asked a question you shouldn't ask. His hand cupped my face now, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. Do you know how rare that is in my world? How valuable? I'm not valuable. I'm just... If you say just a secretary, I will have to prove you wrong in ways that will make you very late for work. The threat, or was it a promise, sent heat pooling low in my stomach. What ways? His smile was slow, predatory. Are you flirting with me, Stella Morgan? Was I? Maybe I was. Maybe 2 years of suppressing every normal human desire had finally caught up with me. Maybe the safety of invisibility had become its own kind of prison. I should get back to my desk, I said, not moving. You should. He didn't move either. But you won't, not yet, because you want to know what happens next just as much as I do. And what happens next? Tonight I take you to dinner, not as your boss, not as Sebastian Corsetti, head of a criminal empire, just as a man who wants to know everything about the woman who's been haunting his thoughts for 2 years. One dinner doesn't mean I'm yours, I said, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. His smile widened. No, but it's a start. And Stella? I'm a very patient man when I know I'll get what I want in the end. What if you don't get what you want? The question hung between us, and for a moment, something vulnerable flickered across his face. Then I'll have spent an evening with the most fascinating woman I've ever met. That's not a loss. A knock at the door broke the spell. Marco's voice came through. Boss, the Giordano brothers are here. Sebastian's hand dropped from my face, and the mask of cold authority slipped back into place so quickly it was almost jarring. Send them to conference room 2. I'll be there in 5 minutes. He looked at me one more time, his expression softening just slightly. 7 o'clock tonight. Don't make me send Marco to collect you. I'll be ready, I heard myself say, as if my mouth had disconnected from my brain. I know you will. He moved past me to open the door, pausing just long enough to murmur near my ear. Wear the blue dress again. I have plans for it. Then he was gone, leaving me standing in his office with my heart racing and my carefully constructed walls crumbling around me. I returned to my desk and tried to focus on work, but it was impossible. Everything had changed. The man I'd thought barely noticed my existence had been watching me for 2 years, had learned my habits, my struggles, my needs, had quietly ensured I had what I needed to survive, even if it meant exposing himself in the process. David Morrison called at 2 in the afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but professional habit won out. Stella, he said warmly, I was hoping you'd thought about that coffee. From Sebastian's office, I heard a door slam. I'm sorry, David. I don't think that would be appropriate. Because of Corsetti? He sounded surprised. Stella, I know he can be intimidating, but you don't have to let him dictate your personal life. If only it were that simple. It's not that. I'm not in a place for coffee right now, but I appreciate the offer. When I hung up, Marco appeared beside my desk. Boss wants you to cancel all his afternoon meetings after 4. Says he needs to prepare for tonight. Prepare for what? Marco's expression was knowing. You really don't see it, do you? How he looks at you. How he's always looked at you. He's my boss. He's a man, Marco corrected. A very dangerous, very possessive man who's finally decided to stop pretending he doesn't want something. Or someone. He leaned closer. Word of advice? Don't fight it. He always gets what he wants. Always. The only question is whether you make it easy or hard. And if I make it hard? Marco's smile was almost sympathetic. Then God help whoever gets in his way, including you. The black Mercedes arrived at my apartment building at exactly 7 o'clock. I watched from my window as the driver, not Marco, but someone else from Sebastian's security detail, stepped out and scanned the street with practiced efficiency. This wasn't a casual dinner. This was an operation. I took one last look at myself in the mirror. The blue dress hugged my curves in ways that made me self-conscious and confident simultaneously. I'd spent an hour on my hair, letting it fall in soft waves instead of the severe bun I wore to work. Minimal makeup, but enough to accentuate features I usually tried to hide. I looked like someone who might belong in Sebastian Corsetti's world. The thought terrified me. My phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number as last night, though I knew now it was Sebastian's private line. The car is waiting. Don't keep me waiting, too. I grabbed the small clutch, also gifted, also perfect, and headed downstairs. The driver opened the door without a word, and I slid into the leather interior. The privacy screen was up, separating me from the front seat, and soft classical music played through hidden speakers. We drove for 20 minutes, leaving my neighborhood far behind, and entering the part of Chicago where money whispered instead of shouted. The restaurant, if it could be called that, was unmarked, just a discreet door in an elegant brownstone. The driver opened my door and gestured for me to enter. Inside, the space was intimate and exclusive. Perhaps a dozen tables, all occupied by people who radiated wealth and power. A maitre d' appeared immediately, as if he'd been waiting for me specifically. Ms. Morgan, Mr. Corsetti is expecting you. He led me through the dining room to a private area separated by heavy velvet curtains. Behind them was a single table set for two, candlelit and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city lights. Sebastian stood when I entered, and the sight of him in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit nearly stopped my heart. He looked predatory and beautiful, dangerous and compelling, everything I should have been running from. Stella. He moved toward me, taking my hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and intensely intimate. You're even more beautiful than I imagined. You've seen me every day for 2 years, I managed, hyper-aware of his lips against my skin. In those terrible, shapeless dresses you hide behind. His thumb stroked across my knuckles. Not like this. Never like this. He pulled out my chair, waiting until I was seated before taking his own seat across from me. A waiter appeared immediately with wine, red, expensive, the kind of bottle that cost more than my monthly rent used to cost. I can't drink much, I said as he poured. I need to be clear-headed. For what? For whatever this is. I gestured between us. Whatever you think is happening here. Sebastian's smile was slow and dangerous. What's happening here is simple. I'm having dinner with a woman I find extraordinary, a woman I've wanted for so long that patience has become torture. You don't know me. Not really. Don't I? He leaned back, swirling the wine in his glass. You're 26 years old. You grew up in Ohio, small town, working-class family. Your father died when you were 19. Heart attack, sudden, devastating. Your mother was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 2.5 years ago. That's when you moved to Chicago, looking for work that paid enough to cover experimental treatments insurance won't touch. My throat tightened. That's just facts. Anyone could find that out. You take your coffee black because you developed the taste working double shifts at a diner in Columbus. You always carry a worn copy of Jane Eyre in your purse. Your mother's from college. You're left-handed, but you learned to write with your right hand because a teacher told you it was improper. You hate fluorescent lights because they give you headaches, but you never complain. You have nightmares about drowning, which is why you never go near the lake. I stared at him, my heart pounding. How could you possibly know that? Because I pay attention. Because every time you reach for your coffee, you use your left hand. But when you write, you switch. Because I've seen the book in your purse 1,000 times, seen how carefully you handle it. Because I've noticed you wince when the lights flicker. Because once, early on, Marco suggested team drinks by the lakefront, and you went pale and made an excuse. That's not knowing me. That's surveillance. It's both. He didn't apologize. I wanted to understand you, why you were here, what you needed, what you feared. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to know. The waiter returned with the first course, something elegant and artfully arranged that I barely saw. My entire focus was on the man across from me, who had apparently spent 2 years studying me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Why? I asked. Why me? You could have anyone. Women who fit your world, women who understand your life. Why someone like me? Because everyone else wants something from me. His voice was matter of fact. Power, money, connection, protection. They see Sebastian Corsetti, head of the family, man of influence. But you? He leaned forward, his eyes intense. You never wanted anything from me. You did your job perfectly and asked for nothing in return. Do you know how rare that is? How intoxicating? I did want something, I admitted. I wanted to stay invisible, to be left alone. And I gave you that. For 2 years I let you hide, even though every instinct I had was screaming at me to pull you out of the shadows. His jaw tightened. But then yesterday, watching that naive lawyer look at you like you were something he could claim with a coffee date, I realized I was done being patient. So you decided to claim me yourself? Yes. No hesitation, no apology. I decided it was time you knew the truth, that you belonged to me, that you've belonged to me since the moment you walked into my office and organized my chaos without being asked. I took a sip of wine, needing something to do with my hands. You can't just decide someone belongs to you. Can't I? His smile was dangerous. In my world, Stella, I decide everything. Who lives, who dies, who prospers, who falls. I built an empire on decisions. And 2 years ago, I decided you were mine. The only question was when you'd be ready to accept it. I'm not ready now. Liar. The word was soft but absolute. If you weren't ready, you wouldn't be here. You would have quit, returned the money, burned the dresses, but you didn't. You put on the dress I bought you, got in the car I sent, and came to dinner because part of you has known all along that this was inevitable. He was right, and I hated him for it. Hated how clearly he saw through my defenses, how easily he read the truth I'd been hiding from myself. What happens after dinner? I asked quietly. That depends on you. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've already decided everything. Something flickered in his eyes. Irritation, maybe, or respect for my resistance. I've decided I want you. I've decided I'm going to have you. But how we get there? That's your choice. I can court you slowly, like a gentleman. Wine and roses and respectful distance. Or what? He stood, moving around the table with fluid grace, and pulled me to my feet. His hand settled on my waist, warm through the thin fabric of the dress, and I felt the heat of him like a physical force. Or I can show you right now what you've been denying yourself, what we've both been denying ourselves. His voice dropped to something dark and compelling. I can kiss you until you forget every reason why this is a bad idea, until the only thing you know is that you want this as much as I do. My breath caught. That's not fair. No, he agreed, his lips hovering just above mine. It's not, but I stopped playing fair the moment you walked into my life. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was claiming and possessive, and everything I should have pushed away, but found myself drowning in instead. His hands tightened on my waist, pulling me against him, and I felt the hard planes of his body against mine. Felt the barely restrained power in his grip. I kissed him back. God help me. I kissed him back with 2 years of suppressed desire and loneliness and need. My hands found his shoulders, his hair, pulling him closer, even as some distant part of my brain screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, professional suicide. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His eyes were black with desire, his hair mussed from my fingers, and he looked at me like I was something precious and profane simultaneously. "Now tell me," he said, his voice rough, "that you don't want this." I couldn't. The lie wouldn't form. Instead, I said, "I'm terrified. Of me, of this, of what it means, of what happens when it ends." His hands came up to frame my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "It won't end. That's what you need to understand. I'm not a man who shares. I'm not a man who walks away. When I commit to something, to someone, it's absolute. You're not a fling, Stella. You're not a distraction. You're mine. And that means forever in my world." "Your world," I repeated. "A world where people get hurt, where violence is currency, where you'll be protected," he interrupted firmly. "Where no one will ever hurt you because they know the consequences would be catastrophic. Where you'll want for nothing because taking care of you will be my priority above all else. Even above the family, above the business, above everything." His thumb stroked my cheekbones. "That's what you don't understand yet. You're not separate from my world anymore. You're the center of it." A sound from beyond the curtain. Raised voices. Something breaking. Sebastian's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The tender lover disappeared, replaced by the dangerous man everyone feared. He moved me behind him with one smooth motion, his body a shield between me and the door. Marco burst through the curtain, his face tight with urgency. "Boss, we have a problem. The Giordano brothers are here. They know she's with you." "How?" Sebastian's voice was deadly calm. "Someone talked. They're demanding a meeting. Now." Sebastian's jaw tightened. He turned to me, his expression torn between fury and something that looked almost like fear. "This is what my world looks like, Stella. This is the reality you'd be choosing." Before I could respond, 3 men pushed past Marco into our private space. They were all bulk and violence, their suits barely containing the threat they represented. The one in front, older, with silver at his temples and cold eyes, smiled when he saw me. "So this is the secretary everyone's talking about," he said, his accent thick with Italian heritage. "The one who's got Sebastian Corsetti breaking his own rules." "Get out, Giordano." Sebastian's voice could have cut glass. "This is a private dinner." "Nothing's private in this city," Giordano replied, his eyes still on me. "Especially not when it involves family business. And making the help your personal property? That's family business." I felt Sebastian tense beside me, felt the violence coiling in him like a spring about to snap. Marco had his hand inside his jacket, on a gun, I realized with a sick jolt. "Stella isn't business," Sebastian said, each word precisely controlled. "She's mine. That makes her untouchable. Tell your brothers. Tell everyone. Anyone who threatens her, anyone who even looks at her wrong, will answer to me personally." Giordano laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're making her a target. You realize that? Every enemy you have will see her as leverage. Then they'll learn what happens when you try to use leverage against me." Sebastian took a step forward, and Giordano's men immediately tensed. "I've killed for less than what you're implying. Don't make me demonstrate." The room crackled with tension. I stood frozen, watching my quiet life detonate in real time. This was the truth of Sebastian's world. Violence always simmering just beneath the surface, ready to erupt at the slightest provocation. Giordano held Sebastian's stare for a long moment, some kind of unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, he nodded. "Your funeral, Corsetti. But don't say we didn't warn you." They left, Marco trailing behind them to ensure they actually departed. The moment the curtain fell closed, Sebastian turned to me, his expression anguished. "I'm sorry. You shouldn't have seen that." "But that's what this is," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "That's what being yours means. Men with guns arguing about me like I'm property. Threats and violence and protection," he interrupted. "Did you hear what I said? You're untouchable now. No one in this city will dare harm you because they know I'll rain hell down on them if they try. Because I'm yours." "Yes." He reached for me, but I stepped back. Pain flashed across his face. "Stella, I need air. I need to think. I'll take you home." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "I need space. From you. From this. From all of it." His jaw worked, and I could see him fighting his instinct to argue, to command, to simply take what he wanted. Finally, he nodded stiffly. "Marco will drive you." "But Stella? This conversation isn't over. You can run tonight, but you can't run forever. Sooner or later, you'll accept the truth." "What truth?" His eyes burned into mine. "That you're already mine. You have been for 2 years. And whether you accept it willingly, or whether I have to prove it to you every day until you surrender, the end result will be the same." "That's not love," I whispered. "That's obsession." "In my world," he said softly, "they're the same thing." Marco drove me home in silence. When we arrived, he finally spoke. "He's not wrong, you know, about the protection. The whole city will know by morning that you're under his care. That means you're untouchable." "Or a target," I said, echoing Giordano's warning. "Targets get protected. In Sebastian's world, there's no safer place to be than under his protection. He'll burn the city down before he lets anyone hurt you." I looked at Marco, really looked at him. "Does that sound sane to you?" His smile was grim. "Sanity's overrated. Loyalty isn't. And Sebastian Corsetti's loyalty? That's worth more than anything else in this city, including your peace of mind." I went upstairs to my apartment, locked the door, and stood in the center of the room, trying to process everything that had happened. 2 days ago, I'd been invisible. Now I was the center of a mafia boss's obsession, claimed by a man who saw love and possession as interchangeable. My phone buzzed. "Sebastian." "Sleep well, Stella. Tomorrow we go back to normal. But know this, normal has changed. You're not invisible anymore. You're mine, and I protect what's mine with everything I have. I should have been terrified, should have been planning my escape, my resignation, my disappearance from Sebastian's world. Instead, I saved his number in my phone and went to bed thinking about how his lips had felt against mine, how his hands had felt on my waist, how safe I'd felt even in the middle of danger because he'd positioned himself between me and the threat. Maybe Marco was right. Maybe sanity was overrated. Maybe belonging to Sebastian Corsetti was the most dangerous and the safest thing that could happen to me. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to find out which. Morning came too quickly, and with it, reality. I stared at my ceiling, still water-stained, still shaped like Italy, and tried to convince myself that last night had been a fever dream, that Sebastian hadn't kissed me until I forgot my own name, that men with guns hadn't burst into our dinner, that I hadn't been claimed as property in front of witnesses. My phone buzzed. "Sebastian, of course. Car will pick you up at 7:15. Wear whatever you want. You're beautiful in everything." The presumption should have angered me. Instead, I found myself opening my closet and reaching for one of the dresses he'd sent. A deep emerald that brought out highlights in my dark hair I'd never noticed before. I was choosing to participate in this, I realized. Choosing to walk back into his world instead of running. The Mercedes arrived precisely at 7:15. The same driver, the same silent efficiency. But this time, when I slid into the back seat, I found a box waiting on the leather upholstery. Inside was a phone. Sleek. Expensive. Already programmed with a single contact. Sebastian. A note in bold, masculine handwriting. Your old phone isn't secure. Use this. Only I have the number. S. I held the device, understanding what it represented. Another tie, another way he was weaving himself into my life. Another piece of my independence sacrificed on the altar of his protection. I powered it on. The office felt different when I arrived. People looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in 2 years. Conversations stopped when I passed. The other assistants on the floor whispered behind their hands. Even the security guards nodded with new respect. Marco was waiting by my desk, his expression grave. We need to talk, he said, about the new protocols. Protocols? He gestured for me to sit, then pulled up a chair beside my desk, something he'd never done before. As of last night, you're under the family's protection. That means rules. Non-negotiable rules. I felt my spine stiffen. I didn't agree to. You were at dinner with the boss when the Giordanos showed up. That makes it official whether you agreed or not. His voice softened slightly. Stella, I know this is overwhelming, but these rules exist for your safety. Sebastian's enemies will see you as leverage. We need to make sure they never get the chance to use you. My stomach twisted. What kind of rules? Marco pulled out a tablet and began scrolling. First, you don't go anywhere alone. Ever. Driver picks you up in the morning, takes you home at night. You want to go to lunch? Shopping? Visit your mother in Ohio? Security goes with you. That's insane. I can't live like that. You can, and you will. No room for argument. Second, this phone, he tapped the device Sebastian had given me, stays on you at all times. It has GPS tracking, emergency protocols, direct line to Sebastian and me. Third, you don't take meetings, accept packages, or engage with anyone who hasn't been vetted. Fourth, stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. This is too much. I'm a secretary, You're not a secretary anymore. Marco's eyes were serious. You're Sebastian Corsetti's woman. That makes you one of the most valuable targets in Chicago. Every rival family, every ambitious underboss, every psychopath with a grudge will see you as a way to hurt him. These rules aren't about controlling you. They're about keeping you alive. The weight of it crashed over me. I thought I understood what being Sebastian's meant. But this was a cage, however gilded. What if I don't want this? I whispered. What if I quit? Marco's laugh was harsh. You think that matters now? You think you can just walk away? The moment you had dinner with him, the moment he claimed you in front of the Giordanos, you became part of this world. Quitting your job doesn't change that. Every criminal in this city knows your face now. Knows you matter to Sebastian. That knowledge doesn't evaporate just because you hand in your resignation. He was right. I could see it in his eyes, in the set of his jaw. I'd stepped through a door I couldn't close, made a choice I couldn't unmake. He should have warned me, I said, anger finally breaking through the numbness. He tried. You were there. You heard what Giordano said. Marco stood. Look, I get it. This isn't the life you chose, but it's the life you have now, and for what it's worth, Sebastian will kill anyone who threatens you, literally, without hesitation. In his way, That's love. That's not love, that's possession. In our world, Marco echoed Sebastian's words from last night. They're the same thing. After he left, I sat at my desk, staring at the new phone, at the emergency protocols now governing my life, at the future I'd accidentally walked into. The office buzzed with normal activity around me, but I felt separate from it, isolated by knowledge the others didn't have. Sebastian's door opened. He stood in the frame, dressed impeccably as always, but his eyes went directly to me. The look he gave me was possessive, concerned, and something else I couldn't quite name. "My office," he said quietly. "Please." I stood on shaky legs and crossed the space between us. The moment I stepped inside and he closed the door, his entire demeanor changed. The cold authority melted into something warmer, more vulnerable. "You're angry," he observed. "I'm terrified." "I know." He moved toward me slowly, giving me space to retreat if I wanted. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know the rules feel invasive and controlling. But Stella," his voice roughened with emotion, "I can't lose you. I won't. Not when I've finally stopped hiding what you mean to me." "What do I mean to you?" I challenged. "Really? Because from where I'm standing, I'm a possession you've acquired, something to protect and control." "You're everything," he said simply. "The only thing in my life that isn't tainted by violence and obligation. The only person who sees me and not the Empire. The only—" He stopped, jaw working. "You're the only good thing I have, Stella. And I'm selfish enough to keep you, even if it means forcing you into a world you never wanted." The raw honesty in his voice made my anger waver. I can't breathe like this, with guards and protocols and— "Then tell me what you need. I'll give you anything except the freedom to be unprotected. That's the one thing I can't compromise on." I thought about it, about what small freedoms might make this cage bearable. I want to visit my mother, alone, without security shadowing every moment. His jaw tightened. "Stella, please." I stepped closer, placing my hand on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath the expensive fabric. "Give me this. Let me have one piece of my life that's just mine." He covered my hand with his, holding it against his heart. "I'll send 2 men. They'll stay at a distance, out of sight. You won't know they're there unless something goes wrong. Sebastian, that's my final offer." His eyes were hard with determination. "I know what I'm asking you to sacrifice. I know this life isn't fair to you. But I won't. I can't risk your safety. Not even for your happiness." The twisted logic of it should have appalled me. Instead, I found myself understanding. This was who he was, a man who protected what he loved with absolute ruthlessness. Fighting it would be like fighting the tide. "Fine," I conceded. "Invisible security, but they stay outside the hospital." "Deal." Relief flooded his features. He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me in an embrace that felt both protective and possessive. "Thank you." We stood like that for a long moment, and I let myself feel the solid warmth of him, the strange security of being held by someone who would destroy the world to keep me safe. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. A knock shattered the moment. Marco's voice. "Boss, we have a situation." Sebastian released me reluctantly. "Stay here. I should get back to work. Stay." The command in his voice brooked no argument. "Please." He stepped out, closing the door behind him. I moved to the windows, looking out at the city that had become both more dangerous and more protected overnight. My reflection in the glass showed a woman I barely recognized, elegant, expensive, caught between 2 worlds. The door opened behind me. I turned, expecting Sebastian. Instead, a woman stood there, mid-30s, beautiful in a cold, calculating way, dressed in designer clothes that screamed old money. Her eyes assessed me with the kind of thoroughness that made my skin crawl. "So, you're the secretary," she said, her voice carrying cultured disdain. I had to see for myself what could make Sebastian Corsetti break every rule he's ever made. "Who are you?" I asked, though something about her presence made my stomach drop. "Alessandra Marchesi." She moved into the office like she owned it. Sebastian's fiancée. The word hit like a physical blow. Fiancé. Sebastian had a fiancé. "That's not possible," I heard myself say. "He would have mentioned—" "Would he?" Her smile was cruel. "Our families arranged the engagement years ago. It's been understood since we were children that eventually we'd marry. Merge our territories, strengthen both families. It's how things work in our world. He never said anything about you. Because he's trying to pretend he can have something different. Something normal. With you." She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "How sweet. How naive. Do you really think a man like Sebastian can choose love over duty? Over everything his family has built?" My mind raced, trying to reconcile this information with everything Sebastian had said. Everything he'd done. "If you're engaged, why aren't you together?" "We are together. We have dinner twice a week. We attend family functions as a couple. We've been planning a spring wedding." She moved closer, her perfume expensive and cloying. "You're a distraction, Stella. A pretty diversion. But when it comes down to choosing between you and his family's empire, there's no choice. There never has been." The door opened again. Sebastian stood there, and the fury on his face when he saw Alessandra made her step back involuntarily. "Get out," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Sebastian, darling. Get out." The roar shook the windows. "Before I forget, you're under my family's protection." Alessandra's composure cracked slightly, fear flickering in her eyes. But she recovered quickly, shooting me one last poisonous look before leaving. The silence after her departure was deafening. I stared at Sebastian, waiting for him to explain, to deny, to say something that would make this make sense. "Is it true?" I asked quietly. "Are you engaged to her?" His jaw worked. "It's complicated." That's not an answer. "Yes." The single word was rough, forced. "Our families made arrangements years ago. It's expected that eventually you'll marry her." I felt numb, distant from my own body. While doing what with me? Keeping me as what, exactly? A mistress? "No." He crossed to me in 2 strides, gripping my shoulders. "Stella, listen to me. Those arrangements were made before I knew you existed. Before I understood what I could feel for someone. I don't love Alessandra. I don't want Alessandra. I want." "But you'll marry her anyway," I interrupted. "Because duty, because family, because that's how your world works." He didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. The truth was written in his eyes, in the tension of his jaw, in his silence. "Let me go," I said. "Never. Sebastian." "I will find a way out of this," he said urgently. "I will break the engagement. I will—" "At what cost? Your family's alliances? Your power? Everything you've built?" I pulled away from his grip. "I won't be the reason you lose everything." "You're not a reason. You're the reason. The only one that matters." "That's not true, and you know it." My voice was steadier than I felt. "Your empire matters. Your family matters. Your duty matters. I'm the secretary who got too close." "Don't." His voice cracked. "Don't reduce what we have to that." "What do we have?" I challenged. Really? 2 days of acknowledged attraction? 1 kiss? The promise of a future you can't actually give me because you're already promised to someone else. He looked stricken, and part of me, the part that had spent 2 years watching him, learning him, falling for him without admitting it, wanted to take it back. To tell him we'd figure it out. That love conquered all. But I'd seen his world now. Seen the violence, the obligations, the impossible choices. Love didn't conquer anything here. Power did. Duty did. Blood did. I need to think, I said finally. I need space to process all of this. If I give you space, you'll run. Maybe I should. You can't. Not a threat, just a statement of fact. You're too deep in this now. Too many people know. Too many people see you as mine. But I'm not yours, I whispered, because you're already someone else's. The truth of it hung between us, irrefutable and devastating. Sebastian looked like I'd stabbed him, and maybe I had. But sometimes the truth was a weapon, the only one I had against his overwhelming presence. This conversation isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. I moved toward the door. I'm going back to work. I'm going to do my job. And after work, I'm going to visit my mother and think about whether I can live with being second place to duty. You're not second place. Yes, I am. I turned back, meeting his eyes. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just reality. But I need to decide if I can accept it. I left his office, closed the door behind me, and somehow made it to my desk before my legs gave out. My hands shook as I tried to focus on my computer screen, on the mundane tasks that had once been my entire world. The phone Sebastian had given me buzzed. A text from him. You're wrong. You're not second place. You're the only place that matters. I'll prove it to you. I'll break every engagement, burn every bridge, destroy every alliance if that's what it takes. Just don't give up on us yet. I read it 3 times, each word a promise and a threat, because I knew he meant it, knew he would actually burn his world down for me if I let him. The question was, could I live with being the reason he destroyed everything he'd built? Or would I do the brave thing, the selfless thing, and walk away before the flames consumed us both? The next 3 days existed in a strange limbo. I went to work. I did my job. Sebastian and I maintained professional courtesy, while the tension between us grew so thick it was suffocating. He didn't push, didn't demand. Just watched me with those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense I tried to erect. True to his word, he arranged for me to visit my mother. The car arrived Saturday morning, and if there were security personnel following at a distance, I couldn't see them. Small mercies. The medical center in Ohio was bright and sterile, smelling of antiseptic and false hope. My mother looked smaller than I remembered, frailer, the cancer eating away at her even as the expensive treatments tried to fight back. Treatments Sebastian's money was paying for. The irony wasn't lost on me. You look different, she said when I sat beside her bed. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were sharp. Still the woman who'd raised me to be strong. Something's changed. Everything's changed, I admitted, taking her hand. The skin was paper thin, cool to the touch. Tell me. So I did. I told her about Sebastian, about the 2 years of invisibility followed by 2 days of overwhelming attention, about the kiss, the claim, the fiancé I hadn't known existed, about being caught between a world I couldn't escape and a future I couldn't have. She listened without interruption, her fingers tightening around mine as the story unfolded. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Do you love him? She asked finally. The question caught me off guard. I don't know. How can I love someone I barely know? Someone who treats me like property. You know him, she corrected gently. You've watched him for 2 years. You've seen him at his best and worst. You've managed his life, his chaos, his empire from the shadows. That's intimacy, Stella. Maybe more than words or dates could give you. But he's engaged to someone else. He's a criminal. He's dangerous. He's human. She squeezed my hand. Flawed and complicated and trapped by obligations he didn't choose, just like you're trapped now. The question isn't whether he's perfect. It's whether you're willing to fight for something imperfect but real. I'm scared, I whispered. Of him. Of his world. Of what loving him might cost me. Good. Her smile was tired but genuine. Fear means you understand the stakes. But Stella? I've been dying for 2 years. Every day I wake up is borrowed time, paid for by money you somehow found. You've sacrificed everything for me. Your youth, your freedom, your chance at a normal life. Don't sacrifice your chance at love too. Not because of duty or fear or what other people think. Tears burned behind my eyes. What if it destroys me? What if it saves you? She countered. You've been invisible for so long, baby. Hiding, surviving, existing but not living. Maybe this man, dangerous as he is, maybe he sees you. Really sees you. Isn't that worth the risk? I stayed with her for hours, holding her hand, letting her words sink in. When I finally left, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The drive back to Chicago felt longer somehow, weighted with decisions I still didn't know how to make. The car pulled up to my apartment building just as full dark settled over the city. I thanked the driver and headed for my door, keys in hand, exhausted in body and soul. That's when I saw them. 3 men, emerging from the shadows near the entrance. Not Sebastian's men. I'd learned to recognize them. These were different, harder, wrong. I froze, every instinct screaming danger. My hand went to the phone in my pocket. Sebastian's phone, the one with the emergency protocols. Ms. Morgan, the lead man said, his accent thick with Eastern European roots. Russian, the Bratva. We'd like a word. I have nothing to say to you. I backed away, my fingers closing around the phone. We think you do. He moved closer, and I saw the bulge of a weapon under his jacket. Sebastian Corsetti has something that belongs to our organization. Information. Money. We've been patient, but patience has limits. I don't know anything about his business. My thumb found the emergency button on the phone, pressed it 3 times. Silent alarm, Marco had said. 3 presses means immediate danger. You work for him, sleep in his bed. You know everything. The man's smile was cold. Come with us quietly, or we take you screaming. Your choice. I ran. It was stupid, reckless, probably suicidal. But fear overrode logic and I bolted back toward the street, toward lights and people and safety. I didn't make it 3 steps before hands grabbed me from behind, yanking me back into the shadows. I screamed, fought, clawed at the arms restraining me. A hand clamped over my mouth, cutting off the sound. I was being dragged toward a waiting van, its door open like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. Then everything exploded into chaos. Black SUVs screeched to a halt, blocking the street. Men poured out. Sebastian's men, I recognized Giovanni and others, with weapons drawn. The Russians holding me hesitated, calculating odds, evaluating escape routes. Let her go. Sebastian's voice cut through the night, cold and absolute. He stood in the middle of the street, flanked by Marco, his entire body radiating controlled violence. Let her go now, and I'll let you live long enough to tell your bosses why you failed. She's leverage, the Russian holding me called back. You want her back? Then we negotiate. There is no negotiation. Sebastian took a step forward, and even from a distance I could see the deadly intent in his eyes. You touched what's mine. That's not a negotiation point. That's a death sentence. The man holding me tightened his grip, his gun pressing against my ribs now. You won't risk her life. Won't I? Sebastian's smile was terrifying. You're assuming I'm rational where she's concerned. That's your first mistake. I'm not. I'm possessive, obsessive, and willing to burn everything to get her back, including her, if it means you don't get to keep her. The casual way he said it, willing to burn everything including me, should have horrified me. Instead, I understood the message beneath the words. He was telling them I was worthless as leverage, because he'd rather see me dead than in their hands. It was twisted, wrong, and somehow exactly what I needed to hear. You're insane, the Russian said. Yes. Sebastian took another step. I am. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to release her. You're going to get back in your van. And you're going to drive straight to your bosses and tell them that Stella Morgan is off limits. Permanently. Or... He paused. I start a war that ends with your entire organization bleeding out in the streets. The Bratva doesn't take orders from... The shot came out of nowhere. The man holding me jerked, his grip loosening as he stumbled. Not a killing shot. Sebastian's sniper had aimed for his shoulder. But it was enough. I twisted free, running toward Sebastian like my life depended on it. Which it did. He caught me, his arms wrapping around me with bruising force, and I felt the thundering of his heart against my cheek. I've got you, he murmured into my hair. I've got you. Behind us, his men were disarming the Russians with brutal efficiency. The one who'd been shot was on his knees, blood spreading across his shirt. Sebastian turned, still holding me, and addressed him directly. Tell Petrov this is his only warning. Stella Morgan is under my personal protection. Anyone who touches her looks at her wrong. Even thinks about using her as leverage. They die, not quickly, not cleanly. They die screaming. Are we clear? The man nodded, his face gray with pain. Good. Sebastian gestured to Marco. Patch him up. Send him back with the message. The others... He paused, his voice dropping to something arctic. Feed them to the lake. Make sure Petrov understands the price of tonight's mistake. I should have been horrified. Should have pulled away from a man who could order death so casually. But I was shaking too hard, the adrenaline crash hitting me all at once. Sebastian felt it, scooping me into his arms and carrying me to the waiting SUV. The hospital, Marco said. She should be checked. Home, Sebastian interrupted. My home. Get Dr. Rossi there in 20 minutes. I didn't protest. Couldn't have if I'd wanted to. I just buried my face in Sebastian's neck and let him take control. Let him make the decisions. Let him be the terrifying, protective monster his world had made him. The penthouse was exactly what I'd imagined. Luxury and power manifested in marble and leather and floor-to-ceiling views of Chicago. Sebastian carried me through it without pause, depositing me gently on a leather sofa before kneeling in front of me, his hands running over my arms, my face checking for injuries. Did they hurt you? His voice was rough with barely contained fury. No, I'm fine. Just scared. You were supposed to be protected. His jaw tightened. The men I had watching you, they're dead. They failed, and they paid the price. Sebastian? No. He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. This is my fault. I gave you space. I let you have distance because you asked for it, and it almost got you killed. You can't control everything. I can. He turned to face me, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole my breath. I can control who lives and dies in this city. I can control what territories we hold, what alliances we make. But I can't control how terrified I was when that alarm went off. Can't control the absolute certainty that if they took you, if they hurt you, I would have raised this entire city to find you. That's insane. Yes. He moved back to me, kneeling again, taking my hands in his. It is. But that's what you do to me, Stella. You make me insane, irrational, willing to destroy everything for the chance to keep you safe. What about Alessandra? I asked quietly. What about duty and family and... I ended it. His voice was flat, final. The engagement, the alliance, all of it. I met with both families yesterday and told them there would be no wedding, that I'd chosen you instead. My heart stopped. Sebastian, you can't. The cost is worth it. His hands tightened on mine. You think I don't know what I'm giving up? The Marchese alliance was strategic, profitable, safe. But you know what it wasn't? It wasn't this. Wasn't feeling like I'd die if something happened to you. Wasn't lying awake at night thinking about the way you organize chaos. The way you never complain. The way you've been silently sacrificing everything for someone you love. The families won't accept this. They'll adapt or they'll become enemies. He brought my hands to his lips, pressing kisses to my knuckles. I don't care anymore. I spent 2 years watching you, wanting you, telling myself I couldn't have you because of duty. Then I almost lost you tonight, and I realized duty means nothing if you're not here. This is crazy, I whispered, but my resolve was crumbling. Yes, but you're crazy too. Crazy enough to work for a mob boss for 2 years. Crazy enough to accept my protection even when it terrifies you. Crazy enough to kiss me back even though every logical part of your brain was screaming to run. He was right. I was crazy. Crazy to be considering this. Crazy to be feeling the butterflies in my stomach despite the trauma of the last hour. Crazy to be falling for a man who made the MAFIA look like a legitimate business venture. I'm scared, I admitted. Good. Fear keeps you careful. But Stella... He cupped my face in his hands. Be scared with me. Not of me. Stay. Choose this. Choose us. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I can keep you safe and make you happy simultaneously. Your world almost got me killed tonight. My world will kill anyone who tries again. His voice was absolute. After tonight, every organization in Chicago knows what happens when they threaten you. You're not just protected, you're untouchable, sacred, mine. There was that word again. Mine. But this time, it didn't feel like ownership. It felt like belonging. Like being claimed by someone who would move heaven and earth to keep that claim.